أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم. أولئك هم الفاسقون. لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة. أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم صدق الله العلي العظيم
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من ليلتنا هذه إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بالحسين عليه السلام. Respected elders, brothers, sisters, may Allah reward you for your good intentions in participating in this majlis for Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Hadrat Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. May Allah reward you for your mourning and your grieving and your commemoration. On this evening of the night of Tasu'a, we give our condolences to the Imam of our time on the anniversary of this tragedy that we're commemorating, and also we give our condolences to the Imam of our time and to all the Muslimin on the ongoing atrocities that are taking place against Muslims, against innocent people, especially in occupied Palestine, especially in Gaza. As you know, over the last couple of days, the death toll and the atrocities have been staggering, and it seems that there's no limits anymore. They say that, I don't know if it's true, but the soldiers have been given permission to fire at will, however much they want. May Allah Ta'ala help the oppressed and grant them victory over their oppressors. Brothers and sisters, the topic for tonight, inshallah, with the help of Allah, has to do with navigating the dunya in order to navigating the worldly life in order to achieve the success in the spiritual life, in the pure spiritual life, which is known as al-hayat al-tayyiba. Before mentioning some points on that topic, I want to begin with a story. This story is actually from the events that took place prior to Imam Hussein alayhi salam going towards Kufa and eventually going to Karbala. If you remember in the story of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he was getting ready to leave Medina, there was a number of very important and venerated people who heard that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was planning to leave Medina, and they came to him out of concern. They came to him to offer him some advice, and sometimes they came to him in order to dissuade him, to make him be convinced that the way he's going is not the right way, in their opinion. One of these people was Ibn Abbas, and Ibn Abbas is the cousin of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam and kind of an uncle to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Ibn Abbas was a student of Imam Ali. He was quite a venerated companion. He was known in particular for his tafsir of Quran. So Ibn Abbas comes to Imam Hussein alayhi salam to try to convince him that the course that he's taking is not the right course. He says that we have a family ties, and I'm concerned over you. Like, he was sincere. I'm concerned about this path and where it's going to take you and how probably it's going to lead to your being killed. The answer that Imam Hussein alayhi salam gives is very interesting. And first of all, he tells Ibn Abbas, he says, أَنَا أَعْرِفُ بِمَصْرَعِي مِنْكَ. I know my destination better than you. I know where I'm going to be buried. I know where I'm going to be killed. And it's very clear for me, even more than it's clear for you. It's not something which is a mystery to me where this is going to end up. And then he goes on to say something, وَمَا كَدِّي مِنَ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا فِرَاقَهَا. He says that my bahre, meaning that the benefit I'm going to get, the sum total of the good that I'm going to get from my worldly life is to separate from it. Meaning that he is trying to convey a very important point to Ibn Abbas about the way he's thinking about this. Ibn Abbas seems to be thinking about this in terms of cost and benefit when it comes to worldly affairs, but Imam Hussein has a deeper way of perceiving it. And then he says to him, Ibn Abbas, I want to share with you a story, something that took place with my father. Would you like to hear that? And Ibn Abbas says, Wala Amri, like I would, he was thirsty for this knowledge and he was willing to hear it from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So this is a very interesting story. I haven't heard it being narrated that much, but it's very interesting. So at this time in Medina, as Imam Hussein alayhi salam is getting ready to go to Kufa, imagine that he is thinking about this story of something that happened to his father, Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says that one time, my father was working in the fields of Fadak. Fadak was the property of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. And Imam Ali alayhi salam had a spade in his hand and he was busy working the fields of Fadak. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam narrates that Imam Ali alayhi salam, while he was working, suddenly he was aware of somebody coming towards him. And he saw that the one who was coming to him was a very beautiful, somebody in the shape of a very beautiful woman. So he's surprised, like, what is it that this woman is doing at this time in this field right here? It's strange. When that woman comes near to him, she says to him, Yabna Abi Talib, هل لك أن تتزوج بي? O the son of Abu Talib, would you like to wed me? Would you like to marry me? If you marry me, فأغنيك من هذه المسحات وأدلك على خزائن الأرض فتكون لك الملك ما بقيت ولعقبك. She says to him that if you marry me, I'm going to make you needless of having to toil on the field like this with your spade. I'm going to give you a type of kingdom that will be lasting for you and for your progeny after you. And so Imam Ali alayhi salam asks her a question. He says, who are you? Tell me, what is your name? She says, Ana dunya. I am the dunya. I am representative of the world and worldly life. So what does Amir al-Mu'mineen Islam respond to her? He says to her, Farji'i wathlubi zawjan ghayri. Go away and seek a spouse other than me. Falasti min sha'ani. You're not in my sha'an. You're not in my status. You're beneath my status. I am above your status. And immediately Imam Ali Islam takes up his spade and he goes back to working. And then he goes on to compose this stanza of poetry, which is famous. It's reported in the books of history. I'm not going to get into that right now, but it's a very insightful stanza that has to do with the nature of the dunya. Now, brothers and sisters, if we pause and just think and reflect, what is it that Imam Hussein alayhi salam is teaching us? And what is it that Imam Ali Islam is teaching us? And what is Imam Hussein trying to convey to Ibn Abbas? Ibn Abbas is no small fish here. He's a scholar. He's a venerated companion of the Prophet. One simple way of looking at this is to say that Imam Ali Islam didn't have anything to do with the dunya. But if we go one level deeper, we see that Imam Ali alayhi salam was actually busy engaged with the dunya. He was engaged in worldly pursuits. He wasn't sitting on a prayer mat doing a tasbih. Right? He wasn't leading prayer. He had a spade and he was toiling on the earth. And this encounter happens, and then right afterwards, Imam Ali alayhi salam does what? He picks up the spade and he goes back to doing what he's doing. So this isn't just a simple thing we can just say, oh, we understand the story. Imam Ali al-Islam is not one to be tempted by the dunya. If we're a little bit more deeper and sophisticated, perhaps we can say this, that Imam Ali al-Islam was not one to be dictated by the dunya and to be told what to do by it. Imam Ali al-Islam was in control of the dunya. He was the one who chose how much he wanted to engage in it and what he wanted to take from it. It wasn't something that was going to fool him with its beauty and its allure and its deceptions. He was well aware of them. He was the one who was in charge. And this is very relevant to our topic for tonight, which is the concept of navigating the dunya. Last night, we talked about this beautiful promise that Allah Ta'ala has given us in the Quran. We've been mentioning throughout these nights that one of the very hope-giving concepts in the Quran that's repeated time and time again is that Allah promises us so much. He promises us in the hereafter everything we could imagine and even more. وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيد. He promises us in this world. He promises us provisions. He promises us security, safety, no fear, no grief. And He promises us something which is incredible, which is a pure spiritual life. مَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً. Surah Al-Nahl, we talked about it last night. Allah says that for sure, most definitely, somebody who has a virtuous actions and who has pure belief, Allah is going to give them a life on top of their mundane worldly life. And that life is a spiritual life. And we talked about last night how we can see glimpses of what that life might look like in terms of the spiritual experiences that somebody has as they go about their other worldly life. Now the question is that how do we achieve this? How do we navigate it? Because the problem that a lot of times that we face, if we're honest with ourselves, is that we oftentimes feel stuck, we feel cornered, we feel chained down. When I talk to people in the community, I see that people are working hard. Maybe they're in university, they're trying really hard to get their degrees, do different things. There's young couples or families and they feel like there's so much pressure to be able to keep up and to support and keep on progressing and all these things. And oftentimes, even though we're believers, we might feel that we're lacking that spiritual life. We say once in a while, we have these pockets of spiritual joy. We come to the majalis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We hear, for example, a beautiful recitation, Quran or ziyarah or al-Latmiyah, and then suddenly something in our hearts gets sparked and we're like, subhanallah, this is so beautiful. But then we go back and it's just mundane. And we're like, what happened? I want to live this special life. I want to have more spirituality. What can I do? So that is, inshallah, yesterday was a little bit more theoretical. Tonight I want to mention some practical points. Inshallah, you can help me with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Point number one, brothers and sisters, one thing the Quran tells us is that one of the essential qualities that we have to have if we want to be able to enjoy a spiritual life is something called dhikr of Allah. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Taha, فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى فَمَنِ اتَّبَعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا يَضِلُّ وَلَا يَشْقَى. This is one of the other promises of Allah that has to do with our life in this world. Allah says that if you follow His guidance, then you're going to have a life where you're never going to go on the wrong path. You'll always be guided in terms of what to do. And you're not going to have a life of shiqawa, meaning that you're not going to have a life of misery. Spiritually, you're going to be sailing. And then He says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. If somebody turns away from my remembrance, that person is going to have a very tight life. وَنُحْشِرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. And then the verses afterwards are very difficult to read because they're some of those verses that really, really like, نَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ نَسْتَجِيرُ بِاللَّهِ. We ask Allah Ta'ala for protection from being raised in the hereafter in a way that is a source of embarrassment in front of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Brothers and sisters, Allah promises something here. He says on one hand, you can have a life and a spiritual life which is amazing. On the other hand, you can have a life where you feel danka. Danka means literally like daqa, meaning that it's very tight. It's very narrow. What does that mean to live a narrow life? Does that mean that everyone who turns away from the guidance of Allah, who doesn't have a practical remembrance of Allah, then Allah is going to make them poor and He's going to take away their wealth? No, that's not the case. We know that there's a lot of people who are very wealthy. They have mansions, they have private jets and whatnot, and they don't have remembrance of Allah. Allama Tabatabai and other commentators on the Quran, they say that this is referring to the scope of their activities, their hum and their gham. What is it that they're preoccupied with? They're preoccupied with worldly life, which by essence is unfaithful. Because we know that we're not here forever. I'm reminded of this new sort of things that's taking place, which is called biohacking. I don't know if you heard about it. Biohacking is this interesting thing they're trying to do. Some people who are very wealthy, they're saying that, why do we have to die when we're going to die? After all, وَمَا هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا. It's just our life here, we're going to live and die. Might as well make the most of the life that we have. So they say that if we can, we're going to put enough money and enough technology on this concept of dying, and we're going to fight death. And I was reading about this one tech CEO who is doing this crazy thing of spending $2 million a year. He has this private team of physicians, and he's undergoing a radical transformation. He's changed his diet, his sleep, his whole lifestyle in order to see what he can do to preserve his life. And recently, he said that most people have birthdays every 12 months, but I have a birthday every 19 months because I've slowed down my aging to the point where it's 19 to 12, and I'm working on making it even more. And you go and look at this guy and what he's occupied with, and it makes you puzzled, right? Here's this person, he says that I've eliminated, like one of the things he does, for example, he says, I've eliminated any type of small talk with anybody because that's just a waste of time. It's a waste of brain energy. I have to keep focused. If I don't want to age, I have to keep my brain focused. So even when I see my son, we don't greet each other because it's just a waste. It's a distraction. It's like, okay. He eats something which is like mush. He sleeps, he said, I think he sleeps like 6:30 at night. And he has all these different, things that he does in his day. And what is he trying to do? All he's doing is trying to keep alive as long as possible. There was a comment that was made on social media. It says that, look at this guy, right? He, in order to try to live as long as he can, he's forgot what life is all about. He has no spouse, right? He has very few friends. And even if he meets somebody, he says, I give him a list of things first because I don't want to get close to them because I have to know that I have all these, I'm very strict about when I sleep and all these things. And it's just like, what kind of life do you have? It reminds me of this ayah of the Quran, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. Their life becomes so constrained around them. Now that's an extreme example. But sometimes, brothers and sisters, there's people who, that's what it's about, And one of the things I want to invite us to do is, this is a practical exercise, right? If we just get a moment and we just sit down and we start to just reflect. Let's say it's a moment after our prayers or something. We just sit facing Qibla. We can ask ourselves this question, that what is it that preoccupies us? Right? What is it that our thoughts are gravitating towards? What is it that is our hum and gham, as they say? The thing which drives us. And that's a good way of telling where are we when it comes to this whole, interaction with the dunya. Sometimes we might see that we do our wajibat, we're trying to do our prayers, we're trying to do this, but really, our passions and our desires and our hopes are all related to like something which is far from the hereafter. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, what happened to the spiritual life? So one of the practical things we need to do, inshallah, when you think about this, is if we want to have that promise of Allah come true for us, is we have to have more dhikr of Allah in our lives. The dhikr of Allah starts out very simple, very basic, but very practical, which is that when it comes to our actions, we want to be people who do things that show that we remember Allah. Allah is the priority. Following wajibat and staying away from haram is the essential cornerstone for being able to experience true spiritual life. And it gives us a type of dignity and honor which nothing else can match. There's people out there who say that I want to be my own person. I don't want to be told what to do. Organized religion, it's too conformist for me. And those same people, later on in their lives, they get to a point and they're like, woe be to me. If only I had something I could rely on that were to focus me and guide me in terms of what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to not do. The worst thing for a bandeh, for a slave of Allah, for somebody who inherently is a slave, is to pretend that they're a free person. It doesn't give them happiness. When you have wishy-washy boundaries, when you have wishy-washy goals, you become somebody who just flip-flops from this way to this way. If you look at the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they were people who had decided on what is their path. Inni silmun liman salamakum wa harbun liman habarakum. There's no questions about that. I'm completely committed to this path, and that's what defines me. That's my identity. When somebody has that in their life, it relieves so many worries, and it gives them a chance to now enjoy what spiritual life is about because they're committed to a certain path. That's number one. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad. So part number one is having dhikr of Allah in our lives. And number two is having balance. One of the things that sometimes we do when it comes to the dunya and our interaction with it is that we're imbalanced. And this is one of the things our imams and Rasulullah imams, they warned us against this. I came across a beautiful hadith from Imam Hussein actually. He says to somebody, he says that, oh so-and-so, don't go after this world as if you're fighting a battle. But on the other hand, don't be somebody who's like a prisoner who's captive. You want to strike a balance. And many traditions, they say this. Because why? Because at the end of the day, your provisions are guaranteed for you. Allah is the one who's going to give you what you need. You have to put in effort, but you have to put in effort in a balanced way. What we see in the modern world, brothers and sisters, is a lot of what we call ifrat and tafrit. A lot of extremes when it comes to pursuing the dunya. I'll give you a few examples, just based on my experience in interacting with mu'mineen, in different parts of this country. We have, for example, the father who is working so hard because he's concerned about the job market. He comes home late every day. When he comes home, he's too tired to be able to really, focus and give time to the children. Right? The children grow up and they see their father, but they don't see him taking an active role in their lives. Or we have the father who is the work from home father. He's doing remote work. But whenever he's at home, instead of being able to enjoy his time with his children, he's always waiting to be able to go back to his home office and to be able to get back to his work. Even sometimes, he might have some time in the day to, let's say, transport the children or do some of their errands. But the family time that usually families would have in the evening, instead he's doing his remote work because he has that flexibility, so he's doing it at home. We have the mother who has so much burden on her. She has the burden of raising the children. She has the burden of, let's say, the household chores. She's doing a part-time job, right? And she feels like she's running a marathon. She has no time to rest. And how is it that she's going? How is it that she's able to survive? Right? Every day she has her 5 cups of coffee. And she's barely making, at the end of the day, right? She just puts her head on the pillow and then she's just gone. We have the other extremes. We have those people, young people, for example, who are so disengaged and they've fallen into a trap of just let's just be gamers, right? We don't want to engage in this rat race. We want to just sidestep it. It's too complicated for us. And many other profiles, right? I'm not trying to pick on any particular person. I'm saying this is what it is. This is the reality. Even within our community, we have these type of struggles that people are facing. And one thing I want to mention tonight, brothers and sisters, is that we have this incredibly important recommendation from our the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ. This is from Imam Ali. He says, "Halaka imru'un lam ya'rif qadra." Meaning what? Meaning that if somebody is not aware of their andaze, of their qadr, of the extent that they are capable of managing things, then that person is going to perish. Unfortunately, sometimes in the way that we interact with our worldly affairs, what we're doing is we're running at a certain pace which is faster than we can even manage. And it has an effect on us. It damages us. It damages our body. It damages our soul. They say that maybe 50% or 60 or 70% of depression and anxiety, meaning the mental health problems that people are facing, it stems from not treating the body properly, abusing the body that we have. We're not giving it that rest that it needs. What are we doing? We're approaching the dunya, we're not navigating it properly. So one of the things that I want to just mention, as a practical thing in this evening is, number one, brothers and sisters, just to, inshallah, we're going to, I know that people are anxious to, inshallah, go on to the Latmiya and all that. But let me just conclude with some practical tips. Number one is that in order to attain that spiritual life, the promise of Allah, we have to first of all be committed to having dhikr of Allah, meaning that we have to practically be doing what God asks from us. Number two is having a balanced approach to what we do. Allah wants us to work. He wants us to go, and it's an honor to be able to do something and to be at service. But He wants us to do it in a way where we're balanced. We're not destroying ourselves in the process. How can somebody enjoy a pure spiritual life when they've burnt out their body? The body is the vehicle for the soul to be able to interact and to be able to be present. So we need to take care of our body and make sure we're not overdoing it. Another thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we have time in our day where we make meaning of our lives. This is something which is very important. There was, in the past, just as a quick example here, in the past, we didn't have access to electricity. Naturally, when the sun would go down, people would naturally have an opportunity to kind of say that, okay, I'm going to separate from the dunya and the worldly activities. Now I'm going to have a chance to actually try to, make meaning. Well, so what am I here for again? Right? What am I actually striving for? What's my purpose? We need to build in time into our daily routines to have this opportunity. Sometimes we're so busy, we're on the run, we're like, okay, I have to do this, I have to say my prayers, as soon as I'm done my prayers, I need to go to this and do that, right? But just building in a few minutes here and there can be very powerful. And the last point I want to mention, I know that, again, there's a lot of parents and, they're looking to do for some advice, some points for their children. One of the most important things, brothers and sisters, that as parents we need to do is to make sure that we don't send double messages to our children. On one hand, we bring them to the majalis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and we hear these incredible hadiths about how the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, that they would have the world serve them. They weren't servants to the world. But then what we do practically is we tell our children that the most important thing for me when it comes to you is that you attain the maximum that you possibly can in this world. And I'm not going to be happy with you unless you do that. Sometimes we go one step further, which is to say that I want you to be exactly like me. Right? I'm an engineer, you have to be an engineer. I'm a physician, you have to be a physician. And if you do anything else, I'm not going to be happy with you. And sometimes these young people are crying. They're saying that Allah made me to be this way. For example, He made me an artist. He made me a teacher. He made me a professor, and my parents want me to be this. My parents are naturally, let's say my father is naturally an engineer. I'm naturally a creative. So there's a mismatch there. And what's happening is that we have taken, as parents, I'm speaking as a parent, we might have taken a certain understanding of the way we're supposed to approach the dunya, and mistakenly we're providing it and giving it to our children. Instead, brothers and sisters, we need to appreciate them for what they are and let Allah do the tarbiyah. We have to put in those things. We have to give them motivated. Yes, it's important not to be lazy. Yes, it's important to be on top of things. But it's important to also let them take the path that Allah has in mind for them. And that pressure that sometimes comes and says that the dunya, it's in conflict with what's more important, which is those principles for having successful akhirah. With that, inshallah, we pray to Allah Ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to have a correct interaction with the dunya, to correctly navigate it, and that His promises when it comes to the spiritual life are, inshallah, that we are able to realize them in our lives with the barakah of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The ninth night of Muharram is a very difficult night for the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. In hadith, we're told that when Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam was describing what happened on this night, he says that this was the ninth day was the day in which the reinforcement of the soldiers from Sham, they reached Karbala, and they had completely surrounded the army of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and Umar ibn Sa'ad and the other commanders, they became certain that Imam Hussein would not have any supporters join him other than those who were already there. So they were very happy. But Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Bi abi al-mustad'af, may my father be sacrificed for the one who was in this state, al-gharib, and who was far from his home. May my father be sacrificed for him, because he knew the type of feeling of the people who were in the camp at that time. This is the night, brothers and sisters, where we remember the martyrdom of Abu al-Fadl Abbas ibn Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Abu al-Fadl Abbas, he's known as being the flag bearer. He's known as being the one who would bring water. And these were the positions that had the most responsibility attached to them. And the reason why Abu al-Fadl Abbas was given these responsibilities is because everyone knew that of all the people, Abu al-Fadl Abbas was the one who, if Imam Hussein asked him to do something, he would be there and give it 100%. Abu al-Fadl Abbas was the one who was completely reliable and dependent. Every leader always needs this, somebody who they can rely on whenever they want. And that person becomes like a backbone to them. So Abu al-Fadl Abbas was like the backbone to Imam Hussein. He wasn't just his brother who was very close to him, but he was also his backbone when it came to the different affairs of helping and running the affairs of the army and the caravan. Now many people come to this majlis, they have hawa'ij, they have needs that they want to present to Allah, and they want to ask Allah for the sake of Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam that He fulfills their hajat. One of the members of the community here who is ill and who is in need of shifa is our dear brother Muhammad Raza, and there are others as well too. There's a young lady who was recently diagnosed with cancer, and there's others as well. On this night, I would like to request you to, inshallah, join me in reciting 5 times أما يجيب أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله صلى الله عليك وعلى أخيك أبي الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you, O Master of Martyrs, O Abu Abdullah, O grandson of Rasulullah, O son of Ali and Fatima. Peace and blessings be upon you and upon your brother Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas ibn Amir al-Mu'mineen. On the night of Ashura, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam tells his companions, "You can go now, you are free of my bay'ah, my allegiance," we are told that one by one the companions repledged their loyalty to Imam Hussein. But do you know who was the first among them? The first to do this, the first to initiate that pledging of allegiance, it was none other than his brother Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas ibn Amir al-Mu'mineen. As we say in the ziyarah, فَنِعَمَ الْأَخُ الْمُوَاسِي, what a great, excellent brother he was to his brother Hussein. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was always there for Imam Hussein. But when it came for the battle on the day of Ashura, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was not the first person to go and seek permission. In fact, he waited until one by one all the Bani Hashim had gone and they had become martyrs. Why is it that he waited when he was the first person to repledge his allegiance? Because Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas knew his position with Imam Hussein. He knew what it would mean if he were to ask permission to go to the battlefield. So he waits until the very end when he sees there's no one else left. Ali Akbar has become martyred. Qasim has become martyred. The others have become martyred. He goes to his brother. He says, "Oh, my brother, will you give me permission to go fight these people? My chest has become constricted. I wish to seek revenge for what they have done." Imam Hussein alayhi salam looks at him. His eyes become tearful. He says, "إِذَا مَضَيْتَ تَفَرَّقَ عَسْكَرِي." "Oh, Abbas, your likeness is a likeness of an entire army. If you were to go, then my whole army will be dissipated." But eventually, Imam Hussein alayhi salam tells his brother, he might have heard the cries of the children at that time. He might have heard the cries of the infant. He told his brother, "If you wish to go, then can you get some water for these children?" After all, Abbas was the siqa, he was the water bearer. Abbas alayhi salam has his mission from his imam. He takes up his sword, he mounts his horse, he makes his way to the Euphrates River. The Maqatil say that not just 100 men, not just 1,000 men, but 4,000 men had been stationed to guard the river. They did not want a single drop of water to be going to the caravan, into the tents of Imam Hussein and the Ahlul Bayt. Bayt. Abbas alayhi salam is fighting his way. He is the son of Ali, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. No one can stand in front of him. He takes the water skin. He makes it to the river. He fills the water skin. He has a mission from his Imam. He has to take the water skin back to the children. Abbas alayhi salam mounts his horse. He is going to protect that water skin no matter what. He goes and he starts to return. But now the enemy soldiers are frantic. They cannot let that water reach the children. One of them hides behind a tree. When Abbas alayhi salam passes by, he comes out and he strikes. What is he aiming for? He's aiming for the arm of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. You know, they say that later on, sometime later, the news comes to Medina of what happened on the battlefield of Ashura. And there's a lady who is waiting for that news. Her name is al-Banin. You know who she is? She's the mother of Abbas alayhi salam. And when she hears the story of what happened, she is overcome and she begins to say some poetry. What does she say? She says that, tell me something. Tell me about the story of what happened. Is it true or is it false? They say when they cut off the arm of my son, they took a rod of iron and they struck him on his head. Is it true? I know myself, oh my son, if you had hands, no one could have struck you. But the only way they could do this was if they cut off your hands. When Tufail, la'natullahi alayhi, struck Abbas alayhi salam, what does he say? Wallah, in qata'atum yamini, I swear by Allah, if you cut off my right hand, فَإِنِّي أُحَامِي أَبَدًا عَنْ دِينِي, I will always defend my religion. وَعَنْ عِمَامٍ صَادِقِ الْيَقِينِ لَجْلِ النَّبِيِّ الصَّادِقَ الْأَمِينِ, I will always defend the Ahlul Bayt. I will always defend my Imam. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam switches his sword to his left hand and he goes forward. But once again, they take that man hides behind and he strikes him. And now Abbas alayhi salam, his left hand has been cut off. He cries out, oh my Lord, oh my soul, be patient, be patient. Ya nafsi, la takhsha min al-kuffari wa abshiri birahmatil jabbar. Be patient and take good tiding of the mercy of Jabbar. But now they are not going to let Abbas alayhi salam return. They take up that rod of iron and they strike Abbas. An arrow pierces his eye. Abbas alayhi salam falls to the ground from the horse. Hussein alayhi salam is watching this. Hussein comes to the side of his brother. I don't know how he could manage the sight of what he saw there, but he cries out, Al-an انكسر ظهري وقلت حيلتي. Now indeed my backbone has been broken and I have no options left to me. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.